And I had low moments of like, am I meant to do this? I was married, I had a child, and needed to provide. So there was that balancing act of like, am I kidding myself? Because my deal was really almost no money. And, but kept ticking my way up, and finally started getting some cuts, and it felt like a realizable goal.
Hello and welcome to UNA Talks. I'm your host, Lee Taylor. Today I'm joined by John Paul White. And this episode and every episode of UNA Talks, we sit down with UNA faculty from across the spectrum of the university to talk about really cool subjects and things that they're working on, the things that they think about, the things that they teach, and the questions that we have as a learning community to see what insights they can offer. John, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
John, your official title is the eminent visiting artist of practice.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. It's a mouthful.
And you said you've been visiting here for 4 years now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not sure when they get rid of the visiting part, but I don't know. It kind of works for me as a nomad that like, oh, so I can go? I can come? I can go? Yeah.
Yeah, and John, of course, is also Grammy-winning songwriter and performer and artist. You've collaborated with thousands of people. It feels like over the years. You're also a producer. Co-owner of Single Lock Records. What else am I forgetting?
It's weird hearing those things, period. I mean, just hearing Grammy winning, it still has not sunk in. And it's not humility. It's just growing up in Loretto, Tennessee, the idea that I would be able to do it for a living was so far-fetched that winning a Grammy is just like surreal.
Yeah, I bet. Well, we're glad to have you, man. We're lucky to have you on the podcast. Very lucky to have you at UNA. I'll probably mention this again. I'm a graduate of the entertainment industry department and learned. Yep, as are you, correct? And learned just everything I know, during those 4 years.
Same.
And so we're super lucky to have you in the department now and working with students. It's kind of it's just such a badge of honor for us to have you as an alumni and as a faculty.
You. So. Thank you very much.
We spend a lot of time bragging on you. So
that's very kind. I appreciate that.
Well, so speaking of, you mentioned you're from Loretto, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Just wanted listeners who may not know your story. You've gotten the chance to tell it a bunch, but for listeners and viewers who don't really know your background, tell us kind of where you're from and how you ended up in the Shoals. Maybe is probably a good place to start because there's a whole lot in between then and now.
Sure. Yeah. Was born here over at Helen Keller. It was Culver County Hospital at the time, and then my parents were from Loretto, from Tennessee, and eventually moved back once I was about grade school age. And if you're not from here, you may not know that, but it's about 30 miles north, right there on the state line. So it's still the Shoals, but it could have been a million miles from Muscle Shoals. This is, I'm old, so this is pre-internet. This is pre-cable. This is we won't go into, when I was a boy, but Florence, Muscle Shoals.
Wasn't a lot to do in Loretto, probably pre all those things too.
There wasn't a lot to do musically.
Sure.
There wasn't a lot of that going on.
Sure.
And the people that were doing it, I didn't really have access to them. There were no one in my family other than I had lots of aunts that played church organ, but outside of that, no musicians. So I didn't really have anybody to feed off of. The idea, as I alluded to earlier, the idea of this being a vocation, being a career, it wasn't that I couldn't dream. I had lots of dreams, but it never seemed feasible. Just like it was a superpower that other people had, and that, so when I started singing was in high school, and the reason I did was just because some friends of mine wanted to do a talent show at high school, and they were going to do Back in Black by AC/DC, and they were going to lip sync it. But the drummer actually could play drums, and the guitar player could actually play guitar. So they said, "We want you to be the bass player." I said, cool. What's a bass player? And so they had to show me just how to stand like a bass player and pretend I was playing it. So we rehearsed for some reason. And we found out really quickly that the lead singer didn't know the words, which is the only job requirement. So I knew the words, so I became the lead singer. I started singing into the mic because they had a PA there. The drummer's dad played up and down the state line, so we had a PA. I started singing, and everybody just stopped because they had no idea I could sing, and I really didn't know. I had, little old ladies at church would tell me, oh, you sound so good up there, because I'd sing in church. I was like, thank you, but that was about it. And a whole world opened up because they could play. And I said, well, do you know this song? And they did. And we just started playing. It was over.
Yeah.
It was over. And I was 16, so I'm a late start. I didn't grow up writing songs. I didn't stand in the mirror reciting my Grammy speech or anything. It was just like, that just wasn't even, I wanted to play baseball, to be honest. If I was going to dream, it was to be the second baseman for the Detroit Tigers. Mm-hmm. But then that day happened. We played that show, and I saw the way that the girls looked at me on the front row. And it's, it was superficial. It was surface driven. It was just, it made me feel good, and it made me feel a connection to people I hadn't felt before. Doing something that moved someone, that made them, it caused them to have a reaction. I just fed off of it. I hadn't done that before. And nothing mattered from that point forward.
Wow.
But, the Shoals was not involved at all. We started playing VFWs and Elks Lodge and American Legions, and then started playing up and down the Tennessee-Alabama state line, which is where everybody cut their teeth around here, because Lauderdale County was dry up until the 80s. So there's bars all the way down the line on the Tennessee side, and we played all of those. But still, not only did it feel like I was a million miles from the Shoals, it felt even farther from Nashville. But I just kept beating my head against the wall and playing, thinking that some record company man was going to come and slap a contract on the back of his Cadillac and sign me up, which did not happen.
Right. And typically does not happen.
Well, it definitely doesn't now. You hear those stories from back in the day, but no, that's not how it works now. So I went back to school. I came to UNA. I had come in 90 after I graduated high school. Now you know how old I am. Came here and dropped out immediately. Wasn't this program? It might have existed, but I had no idea. And the idea of majoring in entertainment industry management, my parents and everyone around me thought that was a horrible idea, that I should go into accounting or finance. So I did, and I hated it, and I dropped out. 5 years later, once that record company man didn't come along, I came back to school. Within a year of being back in school, I had a publishing deal through Walt Aldridge, who was my mentor. He was not full-time faculty at the time. He was adjunct, but mostly Miss Jana Malone, who runs this department. She was here then as well, so I'm aging her as well. And she introduced me to Walt, and he saw a promise there. I interned for him. Next thing I knew, I had a deal with EMI Publishing, and everything kind of built off of that. But I got started pretty late. By the time that happened, I was in my mid-20s, and just figuring it out, because I didn't write songs until then. I wrote them because I needed to. I just wanted to sing. But writing songs was really where I had the most promise at the time, and that's how I got in the door.
What do you think? So Walt Aldridge, fantastic songwriter, still
brilliant
to this day, and UNA is proud to call him one of our own as well, and has taught many people like you in that craft. What would you say? If you said you're late to the game, I think for a lot of musicians that that would make sense to somebody else saying, well, you started when you're 16. It sounds like you got a pretty good start. But, I think most musical bios you'll see, I mean, as soon as they can talk, they're picking up something. And or they start writing songs. We've all heard those biographies. It is interesting that is kind of considered late to the game. So you're in your 20s, you've been doing this for a while, and you finally have, seems like, a mentor in your life who is your teacher, which is, that's how it goes. That's what we're here for. What was it that Walt unlocked in you that helped you uncover that potential that then just within a year he saw enough promise in you to help you get a deal?
To hear him tell it, he saw it in the first 3 songs I gave him. Now, they weren't going to get cut. They weren't going to be hits, but he saw it. And he knew that I hadn't written very much at all. And so I was learning how to write songs with him standing there in the wings, which is in some ways horrible, to have somebody that's written 2 songs of the year, that's had a record deal, that has cuts on Reba and Pam Tillis and Earl Thomas Conley, and it's insane. And for him to be looking over my shoulder, that was, but it also was a motivator. I could have crumbled, I could have just walked away from the anxiety of it, but I wanted it so badly that I just kept pushing the rock up the hill. And to his credit, he never told me something was good that wasn't. He never cheerleaded. He never pretended that this is a hit. No, I didn't. That's not. It was tough love. It was not that. And I am very, very fortunate. I'm very thankful. And it doesn't work for everybody, but for me, it really worked because I'd just walk out of the room with, by God, I'm going to impress you with this next one. Or, okay, the second verse is weak. I'm going to write it better. Or the chorus obviously didn't connect with you. It needs to be bigger. It needs to, whatever. And I just built on it. And I had low moments of like, am I meant to do this? I was married. I had a child and needed to provide. So there was that balancing act of like, am I kidding myself? Because my deal was really almost no money. And, but kept ticking my way up, and finally started getting some cuts, and it felt like a realizable goal. Yeah.
What was the first thing, sort of, after you signed a deal with EMI? You said. So after you signed your deal with EMI, what was sort of the first experience you had where you felt like, what was that? Where you really feel like maybe I can. Yeah. Commit to this, and I'm not going to regret it. What was kind of the turning point for you there?
I think I did a lot of writes with Walt, or a lot of writes with Brad Chrysler, and then they convinced Mark Narmore and Donnie Lowry and people here in town to write with me. But I knew they were writing with me because of Walt, because I had nothing impressive, and I knew that then. But they saw promise, and they were great mentors as well, and pat me on the back like, you got it, just keep doing it, keep getting in reps. And but I remember doing a songwriting workshop, a camp out at Doublehead, which is on the Tennessee River out this way, and Walt and EMI and some other people had put it together. So it was about 20 songwriters there. And they'd draw straws, and we'd end up writing songs together. And I was definitely low man on the totem pole. I did not have any cuts, nothing to show, and they just, okay, he's Walt's guy, so we'll give him a shot. And every co-write I went into, I felt at home. I felt like, and these were people that had massive hits, and I went in thinking they're going to be so much better than me, and I'm going to be just watching them write a song. And that's not what happened at all. And they would like lean toward me, and they would want my input, and they would like what I said, and we'd follow that thought. And it really just opened everything up for me. And it also introduced me to a lot of people that spread the word. Hey, there's this kid that Walt's working with. You really should write with him because he's doing good work. And I think everything kind of blossomed out of that. It was a big deal.
What did you take away from that experience that you feel like you're imparting today? I just want to make that connection early, right? Because it sounds like you had such a good experience and a nurturing experience, but one that was practical, one that was it was people being tough on you, but not stretching you to your limits. It was a tough love, but it was love, and you had these collaborative people around you. How do you feel like you try to embody the experience you had with students that you work with today?
I learned early on that no one was really going to be able to teach me how to write a song, that was going to be able to teach me how to entertain a crowd. Those are things that you learn, as I said earlier, through reps. But what really helped me the most was encouragement. Was not necessarily pats on the back like you're great, but just
not flattery, but encouragement.
Not flattery, but like you're on the right track.
Right.
Bring me another one. I can't that song. I can't do anything with it, but bring me another one, and motivation, that kind of thing. And so I'd watch how people reacted to certain things, and I'd file it away, and how they didn't react to certain things, and I'd file it away. And being immersed in it with other like-minded individuals, especially my classmates, that was brand new to me. Other than my band members back in Loretta, there was no infrastructure. There was nobody that wanted to be a manager, or wanted to be a booking agent, or wanted to work in PR. And all these students did. And that's all they wanted to talk about. And they knew the bands I was talking about. They knew the producers. They knew the labels. And it was just like everything was really exponential once I got here. My dreams changed. My belief that I could actually do it, that it was an attainable goal, that changed. And I watched people around me that were dreaming just like I was, and they had plans, and like, we're going to move to Nashville, or we're going to intern at Sony, or they all had plans of how to chase it. And that was invaluable to me to see that and immerse myself in it and feed off of it.
Sounds like it was just as much about the community of other students as it was about the leadership that was walking you through that. Yes,
and I will say, and this is not me tooting my own horn, but the faculty now, it's a lot different situation than back then. There was at the time, we're talking about the mid-90s, and there were people that really had no experience, like entertainment law and things like that were coming in and teaching. Some people teaching the studio classes really didn't have a whole lot of hands-on experience, didn't have a track record, hadn't worked on big records. I didn't care at the time. I just wanted to feed off of everybody, learn everything I could from the book, and ask lots of questions and soak it up. But it's a different situation now, because we've got people on staff that have done it, that are doing it, that have been touring tour managers and worked in management, and been artists and musicians with gigs, and that was the thing that I remember at the time wishing we had, and thinking someday, if things go the way I want them to, I'd love to come back and give back, but also give people an opportunity that I didn't necessarily have. Make the learning curve not so steep. Show me pitfalls, show me things. Here's what not to do, which is probably most of my job, is here's what, but it's not like this.
There's a lot of traps there set for
there are a lot of traps, but mostly there's more like quicksand. There's things that slow you down, and things that don't matter, things that really don't move the needle, and things that ultimately do not help you create great art. And so that would have been invaluable, and I always wanted to give that back. So I'm thrilled that that's come full circle and that's happened.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with John Paul White. I know I am. I want to take a quick second and thank UNA for sponsoring this episode and every episode of the UNA Talks podcast. If you are interested in any of our programs, I encourage you to go to una.edu/online. UNA has a litany of online programs covering every aspect of the professional realm you can think of. We want to help you achieve your goals. So check out all the programs that we have to offer. There's a lot of opportunities for scholarships, tuition, partnership rates, things like that we offer across the university. So we'd love for you to go there and check it out. You can also go back to the homepage, read success stories of our students, see what we're up to in the community. Follow us on social media as well if you want to follow us along and see how all of those things flesh out day to day on our campus and in our online community. We are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now YouTube. And so make sure and check us out and give us a follow, give us a like, all that good stuff. And now we will get back to our conversation with John Paul White. Going back to your experience while you were a student, then what happened sort of post UNA? Was it Nashville right after that, and Sony and all of that? Walk me through kind of that progression, because you were at Fame for a little while before that, if I remember.
No, actually, and a lot of people think that. I've spent a lot of time at Fame. I've written a lot of songs there.
Yep.
Done a lot of demos there. Rick Hall and family were always so gracious and would be like, hey, whenever you need a writing room, just come over here. It doesn't matter if it's with our writers. We just like having you in the building. And I really, filed that away, that someday that's what I want to do. I don't want to be an island. I want to have a place, where a communal place where we all feed off of each other. And that's what that was, and that's how I met Ben Tanner. Mm-hmm. That's how I met Jason Isbell after. Jason and I somewhat met in a talent show up in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
All right, I got to hear that one.
Okay, so this band, I had a band, he had a band, but he was not the front person. He would have probably been 16, maybe 15 or 16. But that band had him, Gary Nichols, and Chris Tompkins, who's probably the most successful of all of us, but the least well known, but the most successful.
Chris famously wrote "Before He Cheats," the Carrie Underwood hit, among
others,
a ton of others. He's actually, little anecdote, I think my second cousin, third cousin. My mom and his parents are related.
It's Alabama.
We're probably related.
I was going to say we're
probably, but I like to throw that around, it got me a few more minutes with Jason whenever I got to meet Jason, because
it's a good end.
Yeah, it was a good end. I was like,
he
I'm
loves
throw
Chris
it out there and just see if I can get a few more minutes with him. It was fun.
Yeah. But that's where I met them. That's where I met Don Shrigley, great engineer who recently left us. Little Dylan LeBlanc. Mm-hmm. He's probably 14 at the time when I met him.
He was already doing it, though, at that time, wasn't he?
But it was directly from the bars to UNA to my publishing deal with Walt. And Walt had had Walt's Time Publishing. And it was a building over here on Pine Street. And that's where he and I and Brad Chrysler, that's where we worked. And some people would come down from Nashville to write with us. Sometimes we'd go up there to write. But I never left town, and I never have. Mm-hmm. I never, I always thought I would. I always thought that I'd have to go to Nashville. And I wanted to. I wanted, everybody hates their hometown. Everybody gets bored with it. They want something new, and I did, but I couldn't afford to go anywhere. And by the time I could afford it, I didn't want to anymore. I saw the value of this place and this community, and the cost of living and the crime rate, and also, the legacy. And because I'd walk into co-writes and they'd say, "So where are you from?" And I knew what to say. Mm-hmm. I could say Loretta, Tennessee, and sometimes I did, but more often than not, I'd say I'm from the Shoals or from Muscle Shoals. I'm not ashamed to say that. And immediately, their ears would perk up, especially once I started getting to go overseas. When they found out I was from the Shoals, it was over.
Yeah, it's an if you know situation, and I've heard that about Caleb Elliott, who you know well, whenever he goes overseas, especially in Germany and Austria and other places that he plays, he says Muscle Shoals is like people's ears perk up big time whenever you say that, because they just have such an appreciation for the legacy.
It's like when we hear about Abbey Road, or
right.
Royal Albert Hall.
It's a romantic word to them. Yeah,
it is, and they've blown it up probably bigger than it actually is, and that's
okay.
We just play it up.
We'll let them do it. Yeah.
But it's cool. Jimmy Johnson told me. Jimmy was an original Swamper and produced lots of stuff. Skinner, the early Skinner stuff, Jimmy was a part of that. Played guitar on Aretha Records and all that stuff. And Jimmy told me that he could walk through the streets of London and he'd get recognized. Never an artist, never in big exposés or bios or anything. It's he just did his work and let other people have the limelight. But he said, I would get recognized quite often over there. It just makes me very proud.
And meanwhile, going to the grocery store in Muscle Shoals,
no one would know him. No, it's true. Donnie Fritz would just walk right past you, or David Hood, or
Donnie, who's in movies and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, people would just not even recognize him.
So I needed to leave town to find that out. So when I started playing my own shows, which was always the MO, I always just wanted to do my own music. I wrote songs so that I could sing.
Right.
Eventually, I loved writing songs, but at the time, it was a means to an end. And once I started going out and playing, or going to write in other cities, EMI would fly me up to New York, or over to LA, or over to London, and I started realizing just what magic we have here, and other places don't. And I didn't take it for granted anymore. Yeah. And I just soaked myself in it. And I could have been I should have probably been in the Chamber of Commerce, the way I sold this place. I was just constantly like,
or they should be.
Oh, you want to talk about Muscle Shoals?
Yeah.
Let me tell you some stories.
Write you a commission check at some point, maybe, or something.
I think it's not too late.
We'll let them know.
All right.
That's awesome. Tell me about what your first record deal and all, and the progress into that too.
So, writing songs for the road, it took me about 3 years before I got a real cut. I got a Rascal Flatts cut. It took.
What song was that?
It's called Holes.
Okay.
And it has the distinction of being the only negative song on the record Feels Like Today, and I'm very proud of that. That somehow it was good enough that it was a guitar vocal. It was not even a demo, and they loved it and they recorded it. It had no chance of being a single, but at the time, people were selling lots of records, so it didn't matter. You just get on those records, and you have a career, and your publisher loves it. Now, if you're not getting a single, getting something that's streamed a ton, they'll let you go. But that's a whole other thing. I was writing what I thought people wanted. I was listening to the radio, I was watching the charts, I was seeing who was cutting, and I'd write, what would Tim McGraw want to say? What would Faith Hill want to say? And writing songs like that, and it wasn't working. So I got a little fed up and decided, there was a specific moment where I decided, you know what? I got this budget, EMI budget. Some people that are listening to this may not know, but almost every publishing deal, it's 1 year plus options. So at the end of the year, they can let you go every single year. So for 25 years, that's how I lived. That was my existence. Like, I may not have a job at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I had this budget, and I said, you know what? This ain't working, and I have to provide for my family. So I'm going to cut a bunch of stuff for myself and be able to show my kids later and see, like, this is something your dad did back in the day. It didn't work out, but I had a lot of fun. And here's immediately, as soon as I started doing that, I started getting holds and cuts. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go farther. I'm going to make it even more me and less Nashville. Got more. Eventually,
you
Nashville.
Your voice a little bit, and
it took a while for me to figure out. You know, Walt used to talk to me about. He said, you got to figure out where your Rage Against the Machine, Black Sabbath, George Jones, Tony Rice, your gospel leanings when you were young. And I loved rap. I loved hip hop. He's like, you'll figure out at some point. You won't think about it, but you won't be conscious about it. But there's a Venn diagram, and there's a place where they'll all intersect, and it becomes who you are. And you can tell people that all day, but some people it takes longer to get there. And it took me getting to a desperate place of like, I'm not going to try to please people anymore. And some people figure that out earlier. But I really wanted to please. I wanted to light people's eyes up. I wanted them to love the song. And so I got the horse back in front of the cart and made me happy. Mm-hmm. And Nashville figured out pretty quick I was not going to be a country artist. But they saw that there was potential. They sent me up to New York and then went out to L.A., met a bunch of people at labels, played for them in their office, and I walked out of Capitol Records in L.A. with a record deal. And there wasn't a lot of people in Nashville getting record deals outside of town. There was, it was almost like a stepchild thing, like, oh, that's the Nashville thing. We don't have anything to do with that. It's not cool. So breaking through that was tough, but I got a record deal with Capitol Records, made the record at Fame, Strings at Abbey Road, with Mike Hedges, who did the first 4 Cure records, did Travis, Dido, some U2 stuff, became my best friend, just love the man. And we were mixing the record. Halfway through mixing, hadn't even heard anything. And Virgin and Capitol merged, and they fired everybody at Capitol. President down, everybody got let go. Virgin's staff got to stay. And so every artist that didn't have their record out got let go. So I was out with and super jaded, super cynical. Like I put so much into that record, and then it's just going to sit on a shelf and not come out. Eventually they let me have it and let me release it, and they get a percentage. But at the time, I didn't even know if I wanted it to come out. I was just so burnt out and so mad. Yeah. And went back to Nashville and lived here, but I went back to writing songs. And that's when I met Joy Williams. Mm-hmm. It was another one of those songwriting camps. And Drew Strauss ended up in a room with her. And the third person was Greg Becker, who I wrote Holes and This Life and a bunch of stuff with him. So it was very serendipitous. But immediately when we started singing together, she and I, it was like, okay, this is weird. Like brother, sister, like I knew where she was going. She knew where I was going. We'd stop notes at the same time and the vibrato would match up. So eventually that became the Civil Wars.
Yeah, I think the world agreed with you that it was kind of a wild chemistry out of nowhere that everyone just seemed to immediately understand and gravitate toward and appreciate.
It was really good timing for it. The only other thing out there, male, female, really at the time was the Plant and Krause one-off record, or was one-off at the time.
Raising Sand.
Yeah. That was about the only thing out there. So Americana was just doing this.
Yeah. Sort of the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes.
Nickel Creek launch, which Alison Krauss was also tied to a lot of that too.
100%. Yeah, I mean, Oh Brother was a huge catalyst, and I got to talk to T-Bone about it later, and he said, so many of y'all that are doing it now can, and of course that's his ego as well. It's just like, it's because of me, but he's not wrong. And it was kind of like a gateway for me to my dad's country records that I grew up with. I was a rock and roll kid. I loved Brit pop. I loved heavy stuff. I loved all that. I knew country because of my dad, but I didn't really love it. And it somehow full circle, it showed me that there's more to it than what Music Row has given us. And yes, you can love those old country records. You can't make those then I figured out, well, maybe you can make organic acoustic records in that same way. So it was, the timing was great. Social media was new. Yeah. Obviously MySpace had been around and Facebook, but Twitter was brand new, and everyone was using it, and it really helped us because we were on there a lot. And I hate it for people that are doing it right now, that they don't have this. But at that time, if we played a show, I guarantee you 90% of the people in that show would leave there and comment about the show. They didn't have Instagram.
Right.
They didn't have other ways of...
It was their Google review. It was like 5 stars.
And it was instant gratification, and everybody loved the attention. And so they would tag us and they would post. And they might have liked it, they might not, but they all were talking about it. And so it spread so fast that we'd play towns that we'd never been to and sell lots of tickets. And like, what is going on? How did this happen? So timing was really good, but if we didn't have the goods, it still would have fell flat, And we knew that this is something I definitely teach the students, is that the one thing I knew is that I loved it. The one thing she knew is that she loved it. And we just threw up a middle finger and said, I don't care if anybody else likes this. We're going to keep creating based on that criteria. Everything good I've ever been a part of has been selfish, for lack of a better word. And we just knew that there's other people out there that like what we do, and we just got to go find them. And that's what happened. It became personal for people. That song's about me. That song's my life. And sometimes to a creepy extent. People related.
They really connect with it. It's hard to control if there may be
pros and cons.
How deeply they connect with it, and you're like, well, that wasn't really our intent, but it's really outside of your control.
More often than not, what they gleaned from the song was not the intent of the song. But I did that on purpose.
Sure.
That was another thing I learned from Walt, is he made a comment. I had a wedding ring in a song. It was just an aside in the verse about a wedding ring, a wedding band, whatever. And he was like, you should leave that out. And I said, why? He said, well, by putting it in there, it's only relatable to people that are in a relationship or married. You just take that one little thing out and you've included everyone. And I just kept taking that to the nth degree. Like, don't make it specific. Don't make it too personal. It can be personal, but leave it a little vague, leave it a little fuzzy, and then people hear what they want to hear. And then they come up to you and they say, man, this song got me through my divorce, and it meant this to me. And I'd just be like, yeah, sure, that's what it was about, and just take credit for it. But it's just so much more powerful to let them fill in the blanks.
And that's also a recipe for success. Inadvertently, the point isn't the success of that, but something that everyone can resonate with is going to carry itself a lot farther than something that people have to sort of have some kind of esoteric connection with, of course. So that's
true.
The beauty and the power at the same time of all the stuff that you named earlier that you love is that people can insert themselves into that and identify with it, whether it's Merle Haggard or whoever you said.
Because that's how they made music. Right. Every one of my heroes, that's how they made music. Right. It's terrifying, because maybe no one likes what I do. And I have heroes like Elliott Smith and Jeff Buckley and people like that were not appreciated in their time. They didn't find their people until they were gone. Elliott somewhat, because he ended up with a major label deal, and there were more people that knew about him because of Good Will Hunting, but still not not the fan base he has now.
Yeah, and Jeff was just right on the cusp of that. Before he died, and he was
one record.
Yeah, I mean,
one
Grace
studio
was
record,
a masterpiece. Yeah.
It's brilliant. And I read that Tom York of Radiohead went to a Buckley show, and he said, and the same thing that I felt is that Buckley showed, oh, you can get away with that. You can do the drama. Rufus Wainwright was that for me too. You can be dramatic. You can wear your heart on your sleeve. You can have the rose in your teeth, and it won't run people away.
If it's authentic, maybe,
yeah.
or if it's part of who you really are and you're not doing it for show,
Yes.
then that's what people want to see.
Yeah. And the other part of it is that you can keep doing it. You know, if you do something that's a trend, if you do something because you know people will love it, you can't sustain that because you have to constantly think, what do they want? What do they want? And change over time. All I have to do is figure out what do I want. And I can do that the rest of my life. I don't need anybody else's opinion. I don't need anybody else's critique or input. And that's powerful. That's very powerful.
And sustainable.
And sustainable.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with John Paul White. I know I am. I wanted to take a quick break and thank UNA for sponsoring this episode of our podcast, where we get to sit and talk with fascinating faculty like John and others across UNA's academic spectrum, if you will. I want to encourage you to visit una.edu/online if you have a minute to check out all of our academic programs, all the things that we're doing at UNA that can help you advance in your career. Take the next steps. You can interact with our professors or our recruiters online right from the website anytime you'd like. You can also read stories about student success, see what we're doing in the community. If you want an even deeper dive, go ahead and follow us, like and subscribe, all that good stuff on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. And we really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will get back to our conversation with John Paul. So, John, your career has taken you a lot of places. The Civil Wars gave you a lot of great experiences. Tell me about sort of when all the opportunities that came from that we haven't mentioned. I'll give you a chance to brag about that. And then how that sort of led into the record, how that sort of led into the record label, and all the opportunities that brought you back to that place where you always wanted to go, which was to teach.
Yeah. Well, with the Civil Wars, like I was saying, I'm not trying to be sheepish about everything and all shucks. But I never dreamed that big. The things that we got to do, I never dreamt of it. I didn't have a bucket list of things that I wanted to do. That just isn't how my brain worked. I was always in the moment. What do I do now? Where do I stand? Who do I entertain? All right, let's go. I wasn't good about long-term plans or anything like that.
I think most creative people probably
I think
identify with that to some extent.
I think there's a little of both, I guess, but I think I know where my bread's buttered. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I need to delegate. And when it comes to that kind of macro stuff, I need to delegate it, and I need to focus on what, in my opinion, is important, which is the art and the songs and that creative process. So getting to, make a song for the Hunger Games soundtrack with Taylor Swift and touring with Adele and things like that, playing Royal Albert Hall. And they'd never registered. To be honest, we played the Ryman, and that was a dream. That was something that my dad had told me about as a kid, about how his dad, who played fiddle, he passed away before my dad was out of his teens, so I never knew him, but he played fiddle, and that was his dream, is to get to play at the Ryman. So I always had that in the back of my head, that like I want to play, not sell it out, I just want to play the Ryman. And we sold it out pretty quick, played the show. Taylor came and sang with us during the show. And I immediately went into a depression because I was like, well, what now? Because I've done what I wanted to do. Now, it worked out. I worked it out. But at the time, it was as high up my list as you could get. And so I had to start reimagining what the dream was, what I wanted, what I didn't want. But, eventually, I think we figured up the last year of the Civil War's existence. I had spent 300 days out in working, and I know that there were even more where I was in Nashville and not home. So, I'm beyond burned out. So the band went on hiatus. And I went home, and I didn't even want to walk across the street and sing for somebody. I didn't sing in the shower. I was done. I was crispy. And was really happy to be husband and father for a while and not have to keep my suitcase packed and not worry about, have I called about this interview, or do I have new strings on my guitar, or all that kind of stuff. I didn't have to think about it anymore, and that's all I had thought about. I had prioritized it over everything.
Mm-hmm. It takes a toll.
It does, and then at some point you raise up and you realize that your priorities are all over the place, and that your family is not your priority. And I needed to fix that. And so for a couple of years, that's what I did. I was just dad. I was just husband. I was homeowner. But little things would happen. Like I was still in touch with Ben Tanner, and he needed somewhere to work. He had just left where he was working. He's an engineer, producer, plays keys with the Alabama Shakes.
Mm-hmm. You guys met at Fame, is that right?
Mm-hmm. He was an intern. He was like an apprentice over there.
Right.
But I had recently bought a little ranch house behind my house to rent it out. I said, well, I need somewhere to put all this gear of mine. Let's just do that. And so it became the studio. And that's been about 11, 12 years ago. And then Ben and Will Trapp had a conversation. And Will, local boy from the financial world, but a music lover.
And a member of the board of trustees here at the university.
That is exactly right.
Great guy.
He approached Ben and was like, what do artists need most? If you wanted to help out an artist, what is the major roadblock? And Ben rightly told him capital. It's money. They have to work 3 jobs.
Yeah.
They need to be able to make a studio, a proper record in a proper studio with a proper producer. They need to be able to quit at least 2 of those jobs. They need a van. They need somebody to press up T-shirts and records so they have something to sell. He said that's the major impediment. And so Single Lock was born from that. That was the MO for Single Lock, was just to partner with artists and help them get their head above water and do what we believed in. The art was already there. The music was already there. The talent was already there. They just needed a little bit of a stand on somebody's shoulders for a minute. And they approached me. And I thought that was the last thing that I wanted to do. I didn't want anything to do with the business. But they played me a little bit of St. Paul and the Broken Bones. In St. Paul, they had already done some work with them and said, this is one of the first things we're going to put out. It's not the first thing. The Bear was the first thing that came out. I think Belvedere record. But St. Paul was the one that we had to grow up really fast because they had a rocket attached to them. Mm-hmm. And when I heard that, and I heard what the plan, I thought, okay, this is a way that I can dip my toe back in. I can be creative. It won't be about me. I won't be in the spotlight. I can help counsel them. It was the beginning of this. It was me realizing, I can help them not make the mistakes I made. I can show it, make the learning curve less steep, like I said before. And I thought, okay, I want to be a part of that. And so that's Single Lock was born from that. And that's what we did. We put out Polly's records and Dylan LeBlanc, Donnie Fritz,
which you
Penny and the
produced.
Sparrow. Donnie was the first record I ever produced, which is insane to be able to say that. But I'll tell the story really fast. I wanted Donnie to be a part of the Muscle Shoals documentary premiere. I wanted him to come and perform. Well, Donnie, rest his soul, hated the documentary because, and I'd say this in front of Donnie, is because it didn't talk enough about Donnie, but also didn't talk enough about Dan Penn and the songwriters, which it would have to be a Ken Burns kind of documentary to get it all in there. But
miniseries, yeah.
I said, well, then you really need to be here because you need to show them what they're missing. You need to show them that they that you were left out. You shouldn't have been.
That was a good approach.
Yeah. And work on somebody's ego. Yeah. and he said, okay, I tell you what, I'll do it, but you have to come write a song with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't throw me in the briar patch. I'll do. So I went over to sit with him, and he had his whirly up in the front picture window so that when he played, he could look outside and see the squirrels in the tree right in front of him. And we were talking about songs, and God, I'd never met anybody that knew songs and songwriters like him. He just retained it all. Yeah. He didn't know how to do anything else. He barely knew how to mow his yard. But, man, he was a musicologist, with the stuff that he loved. Right. So he said, do you know the song Errol Flynn? I said, no, I've never heard of it, and I didn't know the writer. He said, well, can I play it for you? I was like, yeah, sure, man. We're still breaking the ice. And so he went to his whirly and he started playing this song. And by the time the first chorus went by, he was crying. And he hit this part, and this is vintage Donnie. He did this part, and he sang this line. And there's a bunch of them in that song, but there was a particular line that he sang, and he knew it was an amazing line. So when he sang it, he kind of looked back at me as he was singing it, and tears were running down his and geez. I started crying. And by the end of it, I was just like, can you just play me another song? And he's like, okay. And he did it's a Arthur Alexander song that Robert Plant ended up cutting. Okay. If It's Really Got to Be This Way. Yeah. He played me that, and I was crying by the end of it. And I was like, is that a hit? And he's like, no. Well, he said, no. He said, I mean, there was this old boy that put a vocal on it back in the day. I said, who was that? And he said, Robert Plant. I'm like, yeah, I know that old boy. And I told him, I was like, whatever you do from this point forward, you have to make a record like that. Yeah. Just you and that whirly. Because everything we'd ever heard from Donnie was funky Donnie Fritz. Dun, 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 and the drum beat, and which I love.
Kind of the Muscle Shoals sound, really.
Yeah, it's a staple. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's all great, but you've done that. And he said, I have never done anything like that before. It's like, well, you got to do it. Yeah. Filed it away. It was just, that was it. It was just like, that's how you ought to make a record. Well, he'd already told me he was going to make a record with T-Bone Burnett. I was like, great. Well, tell him what I said, because that's what y'all ought to do. Next thing I know, I got a phone call from T-Bone saying, you need to produce this record. Oh, okay. And Donnie said, T-Bone that said it. Oh, wow. T-Bone and Donnie. Yeah. Donnie said it first, but then I was like, I ain't taking this record from, I said, I've never produced anything in my life. And Donnie said, you're the guy. You're the right guy. Yeah. I firmly believe it. And so it happened. And my studio was in shambles. I mean, it was we didn't have everything wired up yet, but we made it work. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, for a songwriter to produce a record for a songwriter, like at heart, and both of y'all are, right?
It was a great.
I bet that was an honor.
It was a great initiation.
Yeah, and the record, oh my goodness, is a great.
Thank you.
I've got a signed copy at home with my other stuff. He's the best. I miss Donnie. He was a great guy.
I miss him too.
Well, so then like you mentioned earlier, you were sort of becoming this mentor figure, and you're rooted back home. You're reassessing your priorities, starting the label. Now you're pouring into these up and coming artists. Some local, I know St. Paul is coming up from Birmingham, and then Dylan and all these other guys. What led you to say, this is the time where I really want to double down on this part of my journey and just work with students? What was that process whenever you made that decision, and what did that look like coming back to UNA?
Well, eventually I started making my own records, making solo records, and I fought it really hard. I didn't want to. I did not want to get back out there into that world. I didn't want to tour. I didn't want to do interviews.
Beulah was your first record since the
since the Civil Wars and since Long Goodbye, which I cut back in 2006, 2007. But one day I just had all these ideas. These things were on loop in my head, and I figured out at some point I got to get them out of my head, and the only way I can do that is sit down and the songs just flooded out. I was just trying to catch them, and so I thought this made me mad too. As soon as they came out, I thought, I wonder what people will think about these. I wonder if these will connect. I wonder if these will move people. So I recorded them, and everything led to the next thing, and I was back out in the world on a much smaller scale, a much more limited. There were a lot of things that I wouldn't do anymore. Some things that I was willing to do. But, I did that, made another record, 2019, The Hurtin' Kind.
Yep.
And things were going well, and then the pandemic came along. I was on tour up in the Northeast. I was on my way into New York City when they finally just shut everything down. I was out there with me and my guitar, and every single venue I'd go to, Boston, Portland, they would say, "You're our last show. Everyone else is canceled. You're our last show." And I go to the next place, and they're like, "You're our last show." It got really dark, really fast. Went home, and then it was kind of nice for a little while. I mean, I don't want to paint the pandemic in any kind of rosy light,
Right.
but I was forced to get off the road, and I was forced to stop a lot of the stuff that I was doing, and it was really good for me.
Yeah.
I was getting back to that
Right.
crispy place. And I got a call from Bob Garferic, who ran the program at the time, Dr. Garferic, and he said, "I know you don't want to do this, but the provost is leaning on me," and that was Ross Alexander at the time. And he said, "I have to ask you, would you be interested in being a part of our faculty or coming and teaching interim or just teaching one class or something?" And I said, "Man, you picked the right time to ask," because I was sitting there with no job. I couldn't tour at all, so I couldn't do anything.
Right.
And I was just twiddling my thumbs, going crazy. Couldn't write songs over Zoom. I hated it. It was the disconnect. So I said, "You know what? I'll give it a shot." I did not foresee that at this point in my life, that's what I'd be doing. I thought it'd be farther down the road, to be honest. And but I came over and fell in love with it.
Yeah.
But even to this day, I feel like I'm horrible at it. I pride myself on being very prepared when I walk on stage. And that helps me with my anxiety, to feel like my muscle memory will take me through this if it has to. But here, teaching, multiple things are happening. One, I'm just awkward and clumsy, and I'm not used to public speaking. I'm not used to, I'm getting better at it. But just, organizing the class to make sure I don't tell them everything I know in the first week. I've got 16 weeks to deal. Things like that. So that was a learning curve. And Walt Aldridge, my mentor, it was basically his position, but he had medical issues and left a vacancy. And so he had some materials, but he had his own way of doing things, and I wanted to do things differently. So that was tough, but also I'd never had to articulate how to do what I do. I didn't really know. I was just like, well, I just do. I just write a song. And then I write another one, and I get better at it over time, and here it is. And so now I was faced with, now I need to talk about, here's how you write a song. Here's the basic structure, and here's how you can get A to lead to B to lead to C. And it was tougher than I thought it'd be. And production class, how do you produce a record? Well, you just do it, and that's not true the more I get analytical about it and see it. So it's been really good for me in a lot of ways to have a different appreciation for it, and to lean on other people. Like, how do you articulate that thing you do? And it's been mind-blowing, and it's been very fruitful, and I keep getting a little better at it. I think I've
our
learned,
students would agree that you're doing a
well,
really good job. It was the rave reviews coming from
this
the,
comes
from the
back.
department.
This comes back to when I was sitting in that seat as a student, and how much I would have dearly loved to have had somebody that was still doing it to talk to me, that had done things that little, country guys like me couldn't even dream of. To be able to have that as a sounding board, I feel that responsibility, that accountability, and I want to give them everything I can give them. I want to. This is a tough business, so I want to equip them as well as humanly possible, because they need it, and I don't take that lightly. So I want to do as good a job as humanly possible, because this is the rest of their life, and if I'm going to put them down on that path, I want them to be, aware of what's coming.
What do you tell? It's kind of full circle. What do you tell students in today's world and today's economy, ecosystem of digital entertainment and all the things that used to work don't work anymore. But it's all still very grounded in the same principles.
I think so.
And I think we like what we like the things that we can resonate with. The things we can identify with, we connect to those things and we invest into them.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that, entertainment ain't going anywhere.
No, people still want great music.
Mm-hmm. And what do you tell students who are fighting even more than probably when you were coming up, right? The demand of the trend and the demand of sort of this prescriptive idea of what makes a successful piece of art and what will automatically uninclude you from that conversation. You were taught how to find your voice, and it still took you a long time how to do it. So what do you tell them to sort of that Venn diagram, like you talked about, of all your tastes and the things that are deeply true of you? What do you tell them to sort of keep them on that path or try to help them set their own compass?
Yeah. I can't tell them one specific thing that works for every one of them. What worked for me will not work for others. There are people, the Craig Wisemans of the world, that have their finger on the pulse of what country radio wants. And it's what they love to do. And so they do it, and they're very successful. I tried to do that. I wanted to put food on my table. I tried to do that and failed miserably. Everybody's going to have their own thing, but it's a tale as old as time. As long as, commercial music has existed, there's always been trends, there's always been people that follow them, and there's been people that buck them. And it won't change in the future. And I make sure they realize, like, if you write all positive, up-tempo songs and get lots of cuts, don't ever feel guilty about that. Don't look at another person that's really true to their art and they struggle and they've got 20 people at their show, but those 20 people revere them, and don't look at that with jealousy. Be who you are. And it takes some people longer than others to figure that out, and it took me a long time to figure it out.
That's the upside down world of entertainment, is that somehow that experience of being sort of misunderstood is revered as opposed to actual success from an artist standpoint. And I think people outside of that world will never understand that. Because it doesn't really make sense, but to an artist it does. So you're almost the current you're up against at times is to say it's whatever works for you, and that doesn't mean that you are misunderstood. If everyone gets if what you're doing happens to be working at that time, count your blessings and go forth and do it. You can go against the grain. Like what you've experienced in doing things where you really doubled down on your own voice, and that found you success as well. It was just maybe not what you had originally thought, because you were trying to follow the formula that was being given to you without realizing that you were swimming upstream, and then the downstream that would turn into success for you was following your own sensibilities.
And I'm lucky that my sensibilities, there are other people out there that like that same thing.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that I really try to drive home, is that you can't control that. I hope that you're the next Taylor Swift, and what you dearly love to sing and write, millions of people love it too. I hope you're able to connect with a young generation or your own generation, whatever. But there is absolutely no way to know. So my advice more often than not is keep your overhead low. Make your art, make yourself happy, and play the long game. Go find those people that like the same things you do, and it will grow. And if you do that, I firmly believe that you'll have a career. Now, what is that? What's a successful career? We can talk all day about what's a successful. In my opinion, a successful career is you can make the art you want to make. You're not beholden to anyone else. You make it on your own terms, and you can pay your bills. And that's enough for me. And if that's enough for you, you can still be very successful in this world. But, the days of MTV Cribs and $1 million advances from record labels and things like that we grew up with, that used to be the thing. Is like, you're not a success unless you're on a major label, unless you've got major distribution in all the world, unless you're on MTV, unless you're on CMT, all that stuff. Those were markers of success. And really, that wasn't true. And it took me a while to figure that out, that in my world, that's not success. Right. And that's why some of the things that the Civil War's achieved kind of fell flat for me, because it wasn't really what I was setting out to do. Yeah. It just happened. And that sounds very arrogant to say that. But it was born out of doing what I wanted to do. And these are the fringe benefits of that. But if you're driven by those things, you'll make decisions based on the wrong criteria. And next thing you know, you don't even know who you are anymore. You are somebody to these people that you cannot sustain. And that's a scary place to be.
Yeah. That's not success.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. John, I could sit here and talk about this all day, so I really appreciate your time, man.
My pleasure,
really cool.
man.
We're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the work that you're doing. I love that folks like you in our community around the Shoals who've had success and kind of the sentiment that I've heard before, you're the kind of guy that could live wherever you wanted to, and you could have made a life wherever you wanted to, and home is home, and this is what you care about, and I really appreciate that about you and so many, I feel like, just of these really gifted, successful people in our area that have that intentionality and have that heart for the young people of this region and the students of this university. They choose to invest their time into that and pour back, as it were. So,
well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks so much to our listeners and our viewers for joining us today. Thanks again to John. Appreciate having you, man. And make sure and stay tuned for more of UNA Talks. We're going to be talking with more professors here soon, so stay tuned. Thanks.